The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the trade world called Valantha Prime. Inside, representatives from 847 different alien species sat in their designated seats. Some breathed oxygen, like humans. Others needed methane, or ammonia. Each had their own section with the right atmosphere kept separate by invisible force fields. Doyun stood in the human section, which was small compared to most others. He wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, a simple black suit with a blue emblem showing his home planet. He had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years now. In that time, he had learned one important thing. Most aliens thought humans were weak and stupid. The speaker for the day was a Velkari named Theron. The Velkari were tall beings, nearly 3 meters high, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their empire controlled over 2,000 star systems. They were old, powerful, and very proud. Theron's voice boomed through the translation system. The matter is simple. The human colony worlds of New Seoul, Busan Station, and Jeju Secundus are poorly managed. These worlds have resources that the galaxy needs. The Velkari Empire offers to take control of these colonies. We will develop them properly. The primitive humans clearly cannot handle such responsibility. Doyun felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. Around the chamber, he could hear the chittering, buzzing, and gurgling sounds that passed for laughter among the various species. To them, this was funny. Humans were always the joke. He pressed the button to request speaking time. A light appeared above his section, but the council moderator, an ancient being called Vim, ignored it. Vim had been alive for 10,000 years, or so the stories said. His species looked like floating jellyfish made of crystal and light. "Does any representative wish to speak against this proposal?" Vim asked, his voice tired and bored. Doyun pressed his button again, more firmly this time. "Ah, yes. The human." Vim sighed. "You may speak, Ambassador Doyun. Please be brief." Doyun stood straighter. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "The colonies you mention are home to 15 million human beings. They were settled legally under Galactic Council Charter 40 years ago. They are productive, peaceful, and harm no one. Taking them by force violates every principle this council claims to represent." More laughter rippled through the chamber. A representative from the Torum Collective, a species that looked like walking crystals, spoke up without requesting permission. "The human speaks of principles. How amusing. Your species has been in space for barely 200 years. We have studied the stars for 20,000. You know nothing of governance." Theron gestured with 2 of his 4 arms. "The human colonies will be absorbed by the Velkari Empire. This is not a request. It is an inevitability. We are simply asking the council to formalize what will happen regardless." "You mean you're asking permission to steal our worlds?" Doyun said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Accusing another species of theft was a serious insult, but Doyun was tired of being polite while his people were threatened. Theron's shimmer darkened, a sign of anger in his species. "Careful, human. Your entire species lives on 12 worlds. The Velkari Empire could erase you from existence in a matter of days. Show respect." Vim's floating form pulsed with soft light. "Ambassador Doyun, your objection is noted. We will now vote on the Velkari proposal. All in favor of transferring the 3 human colonies to Velkari control, indicate now." Lights appeared all across the chamber. Green for yes, red for no. Out of 847 representatives, only 8 voted against the proposal. 7 of those were other young species who feared they would be next. The 8th was from a pacifist species that voted against all violence. "The motion passes with 98% approval," Vim announced. "The human colonies will be transferred to Velkari administration. Humans have 30 solar cycles to evacuate any citizens who wish to leave. Any who remain will become subjects of the Velkari Empire." Doyun stood still as the council moved on to other business. His hands gripped the railing in front of him. 30 days. His government had expected this, but hoping for a different outcome and accepting reality were two different things. After the session ended, he returned to his small quarters on the station. He sat at his desk and activated the quantum communication system. It was expensive technology, allowing instant messages across vast distances. Earth reserved it for emergencies only. He typed carefully, "They've made their choice. Authorize protocol. Revelation." The response came back within minutes, just 2 words. Authorization confirmed. Doyun closed his eyes and took a deep breath. What came next would change everything. Far away, at the edge of Earth's solar system, past Neptune and Pluto. In the cold darkness of the Kuiper Belt, something massive stirred to life. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Requiem, watching status displays flicker to green one by one. The bridge was enormous, more like an auditorium than a room. Screens covered the walls, showing views from thousands of cameras mounted on the ship's hull. The ship itself was 40 kilometers long. It had taken 50 years to build. Constructed in absolute secrecy by crews who lived their entire adult lives in the dark, cold void of the outer solar system. The project had cost more money than most planetary economies produced in a century. "Captain," his second officer said. Her name was Heijin, and she had served on construction vessels for 20 years before being selected for this crew. "We've received the authorization codes. All systems are green. We're ready." Minho nodded slowly. He was 52 years old, and he had spent the last decade preparing for this moment. Around him, his bridge crew worked at their stations. There were 27 people on the bridge, and another 3,000 throughout the massive ship. Every single one of them had volunteered, knowing they might never see their families again. "Begin the countdown," Minho ordered. 29 days until we make our introduction to the galaxy." Jiwan, the weapons engineer, looked up from her station. She was young, only 30, but brilliant. She had helped design the main weapon that made this ship more than just a big target. "Sir, the Singularity reactor is stable. We're producing enough power to sustain full operations indefinitely." "And the main cannon?" Minho asked. "Gravitational collapse cannon is charged and ready. One shot could." She paused, swallowing hard. "One shot could crack a planet in half. Let's hope we never have to prove that," Minho said quietly, but he knew they probably would. The galaxy had pushed humanity around for 2 centuries. Tomorrow, that would end. Humanity had built a monster. Now they would see if the monster was enough to buy them freedom, or if they had just painted a target on Earth that would bring destruction instead of salvation. The countdown continued. 29 days, until the galaxy learned what happened when humans decided they were done asking nicely. 50 years ago, a mining crew found something impossible on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. They had been drilling for water ice when their equipment hit something that shouldn't exist. Metal. Not just any metal, but alloys that human science couldn't identify. The discovery remained secret. Earth's government assembled a small team of scientists to investigate. Sujin was 25 years old then. Fresh from university, with degrees in physics and xenoarchaeology, she was the youngest person on the team, and she would spend the next 3 decades of her life studying what they found. The structure buried in Titan's ice was a factory, not a human factory, something far older. The aliens who built it were called the progenitors. According to galactic records, they had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind ruins on hundreds of worlds. Most ruins were picked clean long before humans reached the stars, but this one had been buried under kilometers of ice, hidden and preserved. Inside, Sujin and her team found blueprints, not on paper or computer files, but encoded in crystalline matrices that projected 3-dimensional images when activated. The images showed reactor designs, weapon systems, and power sources that made human technology look like stone tools. The most important discovery was the Singularity Reactor. It created a tiny, controlled black hole and harvested its energy. One reactor could power an entire planet for centuries, or it could power something else, something terrible. Sujin sat in her laboratory now, 50 years older, her hair gray, her eyes tired. But her mind was still sharp. She looked at the display, showing power readings from the Eternal Requiem's reactor. The numbers were stable. Perfect. Her life's work, built into the heart of humanity's greatest weapon. Dr. Sujin? A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Tae-young, the Special Operations Commander who coordinated Earth's intelligence networks. He was a dangerous man who did dangerous work. But he had always been respectful to her. Commander, she acknowledged. Is it time? Almost. The Velkari have begun moving their fleets. We estimate they'll start occupying our colonies within 72 hours. He paused. Are you certain the reactor will hold under combat conditions? Sujin smiled, though there was no humor in it. The progenitors built technology that lasted millions of years. Our version will work. The question isn't whether it will hold. The question is whether we should use it. That's above both our ranks, Tae-young said quietly. Meanwhile, near the colony world called Arcturus 7, a man named Junho stood at his apartment window watching the sky. He was a farmer, growing modified wheat in the colony's agricultural domes. He had lived on Arcturus 7 for 12 years, ever since he was 18. This was his home. Now, dark shapes appeared in the atmosphere. Ships, Velkari warships, descending through the clouds like falling daggers. His communication device buzzed. It was his sister, who lived in the capital city. Junho. They're landing at the government buildings. Armed soldiers. Hundreds of them. Stay inside, he told her. Don't do anything stupid. But even as he said it, he could hear sounds from the streets below. People were gathering. Not to fight humans on the colonies had no weapons capable of fighting Velkari soldiers. They gathered to protest. To show that they wouldn't simply accept occupation, Junho grabbed his jacket and ran outside. The streets were filled with people, thousands of them, marching toward the city center. He joined them, his heart pounding. He knew this was probably useless. The Galactic Council had already voted. Earth couldn't stop this, but they could show they wouldn't surrender quietly. At the city center, Velkari soldiers had formed a perimeter around the government building. Their armor was dark and sleek, and they carried weapons that could vaporize a human with one shot. Their commander, a tall Velkari with deep purple shimmer to his skin, stood on a platform addressing the crowd. Citizens of this colony, you are now under Velkari administration. Return to your homes. There will be no harm to those who cooperate. This is our home, someone shouted from the crowd. You stole our world. Another voice called. The Velkari commander's shimmer darkened. I will give one warning. Disperse now, or we will use force. Nobody moved. Junho stood with his neighbors, people he had known for years. They linked arms. If the Velkari wanted this colony, they would have to take it over the bodies of its people. The commander raised one of his forearms. Soldiers lifted their weapons. Junho closed his eyes, waiting for the end, but the shot never came. Instead, every communication device in the crowd buzzed simultaneously. Junho opened his eyes and pulled out his device. A message displayed, just 3 words. Help is coming. High above Arcturus 7, a small ship floated in the darkness. It was called the Silent Observer, and it was the most advanced stealth vessel humanity had ever built. Its captain, Soman, watched the scene below through high-resolution cameras. Should we intervene? Her weapons officer asked. Soman shook her head. Our orders are to observe only. But make sure we're recording everything. The galaxy will see what the Velkari do here. On the planet below, the Velkari commander lowered his arm. He had received new orders. His empire wanted to appear merciful. Shooting unarmed protesters would look bad in galactic news reports. "You have 24 hours to evacuate this colony," he announced instead. "Any humans remaining after that will be arrested." The crowd began to disperse. Angry, but alive. Junho walked home slowly, his hands shaking. 24 hours. Where would they even go? The nearest human world was 3 weeks away by commercial transport. He didn't know that help was already moving. In fact, help had been preparing for 50 years. Back on Earth, in a secure command center buried 3 kilometers underground, Admiral Hyejin studied tactical displays. She was the highest-ranking military officer in Earth's defense force, and she had been planning this operation for a decade. Around her, officers monitored communications from every human colony. The Velkari were moving fast, landing occupation forces on all 3 targeted worlds simultaneously. It was efficient. It was overwhelming. It was exactly what Earth's strategists had predicted. "Admiral," one of her officers reported. "The Eternal Requiem reports ready status. Captain Minho requests permission to begin the operation." Hyejin took a deep breath. Everything humanity had built, everything they had sacrificed, came down to this moment. If they failed, Earth and all its colonies would likely be destroyed. The Velkari Empire didn't forgive challenges to its authority, but if they succeeded, "Tell Captain Minho he is authorized to proceed with protocol revelation. May God have mercy on us all." In the Kuiper Belt, Minho received the order. He stood from his command chair and addressed his crew. "You all know what we're about to do. In a few minutes, we will reveal ourselves to the galaxy. Every alien species will know that humans built something they thought impossible. They will be afraid. Some will want to destroy us for it. But we have no choice. Our people are being conquered. Our worlds are being stolen. This ends today. We're rest together. It's spacing. We're rest together." He sat back down. "Helm. Plot a course for Valantha Prime. Maximum speed." It's time the Galactic Council met the Eternal Requiem. The massive ship began to move, its engines creating distortions in space itself. It accelerated faster than any ship its size should be able to move. Within minutes, it would jump to faster than light travel. Jiwon sat at her weapons console, her hands trembling slightly. She had designed the gravitational collapse cannon based on progenitor technology. She knew exactly what it could do. She had run simulations thousands of times, but simulations weren't real. Soon, maybe very soon, she might have to fire this weapon for real. And when she did, people would die. Maybe millions of people. She whispered a prayer, though she wasn't religious. "Please let them surrender. Please don't make me use this." The Eternal Requiem jumped to light speed. Its destination. The heart of galactic civilization. Its mission. To prove that humanity would no longer be pushed around. Its fate. Unknown. Day 30 arrived with no fanfare. The Galactic Council expected Earth to begin evacuating its colonies. Instead, every human vessel in space, from tiny cargo haulers to military patrol ships, broadcast the same message simultaneously. The transmission was simple. No fancy graphics, no dramatic music. Just a human woman in a military uniform sitting at a communications console. Her name was Hyewon, and she had been chosen because her voice was calm and clear. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times. "People of the galaxy," she began. "For 200 years, humanity has asked for equality. We asked to be treated as partners, not pets. We asked for respect, not mockery. We asked for justice, not exploitation. For 200 years, we were denied." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, we stop asking. Today, we take what should have been freely given. This is not a declaration of war. This is a declaration of independence. We will no longer accept the Galactic Council's authority over human affairs. We will no longer allow our colonies to be seized. We will no longer be silent. The transmission ended. For exactly 10 seconds, there was silence across the galaxy. Then, above Valantha Prime, where the Galactic Council chambers orbited, space itself seemed to tear open. Something enormous emerged from faster-than-light travel, something that made every sensor system in the sector scream warnings. The eternal requiem had arrived. Inside the council chambers, alarms blared. Representatives scrambled to understand what was happening. Display screens showed the human ship from every angle, and with each new view, the shock grew deeper. "How big is that thing?" someone asked. 40 kilometers long, a Torum analyst reported, his crystalline body flickering with confused colors. "That's impossible. No species has built a ship that large in 10,000 years. Energy readings are off the scale." Another voice called out, "Whatever powers that vessel produces more energy than our entire station uses in a year." Ambassador Doyun stood in the human section, watching the chaos with a carefully neutral expression. Inside, his heart was racing. They had actually done it. The eternal requiem was really here. Vim, the ancient council moderator, pulsed with urgent light. "Human ambassador, explain this immediately." Doyun activated his communication system, projecting his voice throughout the chamber. "That is Earth's warship, the Eternal Requiem. It is here to ensure that human colonies are not stolen by the Velkari Empire. We strongly suggest the Council reconsider its previous vote." A Velkari representative stood, his shimmer turning angry red. "This is an act of war. That vessel will be destroyed." "You're welcome to try," Doyun said quietly. On the Eternal Requiem's bridge, Captain Minho watched as Velkari warships began to appear. They came in groups, warping in from various military bases across the sector. 10 ships. 20. 50. 100. "Captain, I'm counting 287 Velkari warships taking up positions around us," his tactical officer, Yuna, reported. She sounded remarkably calm, given the circumstances. "Let them come," Minho said. "Open a channel. Let me speak to whoever is in charge." The main screen flickered, showing a Velkari male with dark purple skin and elaborate military decorations. This was Theron himself, the same one who had addressed the council. Clearly, he took this challenge personally. "Human captain," Theron said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have made a grave error. Surrender your vessel immediately, and I may allow your crew to live as prisoners." Minho smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Emperor Theron, I'm Captain Minho, of the Earth Defense Forces. I'm here to deliver a message. Withdraw your occupation forces from all human colonies within 6 hours, or we will demonstrate why this ship is called the Eternal Requiem." Theron laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You think one ship frightens an empire of 10,000 worlds? I have 300 warships here. Each one could destroy a city. Together, they could scorch your entire planet. You are surrounded, outgunned, and outmatched." "Maybe," Minho acknowledged. "But you're about to discover something important about humans. We only build one of something when one is all we need." Theron's shimmer darkened further. "You have 3 minutes to surrender before I order your destruction." "Then you better give that order quickly," Minho replied. "Your 3 minutes are already running out." The transmission ended. Around the Eternal Requiem, 300 Velkari warships took up attack positions. Their weapons powered up, energy readings spiking across the sensor spectrum. In the council chambers, representatives watched in horrified fascination. Most expected to see the human ship destroyed within seconds. Some species that had suffered under Velkari aggression secretly hoped the humans would somehow succeed. But hope and expectation were different things. Vim had seen 10,000 years of galactic history. He had witnessed the rise and fall of 100 civilizations. Something about this moment felt different. He accessed the Council's deep archives, searching for records about the progenitors, the ancient race that had once ruled the galaxy. What he found made his crystalline form pulse with sudden fear. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." The Eternal Requiem's hull was covered in geometric patterns that seemed decorative, but Vim recognized them. They were progenitor engineering designs. This ship wasn't just big, it was built using technology from the most advanced civilization that had ever existed. "All ships, stand down," Vim broadcast urgently. "Velkari forces, do not attack that vessel." But it was too late. Theron, proud and angry, gave the order. "All ships, fire at will. Destroy the human ship." 300 warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic missiles lanced through space. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. All of it converged on the Eternal Requiem. On the human ship's bridge, Jiwan watched her displays with wide eyes. Impact. In 3 seconds. 2. 1. 2. The universe turned white. When the sensors cleared, the Eternal Requiem floated exactly where it had been. Not a single scratch marked its hull. More incredibly, its shields showed green on every display. "Damage report," Minho ordered. Calmly, Yuna checked her screens, then double-checked them. Shields absorbed all incoming energy. The Singularity Reactor converted their weapons' fire into additional power. "Sir, our shields are now at 112% capacity, and still climbing." See, quote, Minho allowed himself a small smile. "Thank you for the recharge, Emperor Theron. Now, let me show you what real power looks like." G1. Target Velkari Prime. The weapons engineer's hands shook as she input the coordinates. "Sir? Targeting their homeworld?" "No," Minho corrected. "Target their small moon. The dead one. No inhabitants, no structures. Just a rock." Jiwan felt relief wash over her. She had been terrified he would order her to destroy the planet itself. Targeting secondary moon. It's designated Velka 2. Completely barren. Fire when ready. G1 activated the gravitational collapse cannon. Deep in the ship's core, the Singularity Reactor fed massive amounts of energy into the weapon system. The cannon created a focused beam of twisted spacetime, a force so intense that it bent the fabric of reality itself. The beam was invisible to human eyes, but every sensor in the sector detected it. It crossed 40 light-years in an instant, appearing above Velkari Prime's smaller moon. Velka 2 was roughly the size of Earth's moon. It had been dead for billions of years, just a ball of rock and ice orbiting the Velkari homeworld. The beam touched it, and Velka 2 simply ceased to exist. It didn't explode. It didn't shatter. The moon collapsed into itself, compressed by artificial gravity into a point smaller than an atom, creating a micro-singularity that flickered for one heartbeat before evaporating into nothing. Where a moon had orbited seconds before, there was now only empty space. Every screen in the Galactic Council chambers showed the same thing. Where Velka 2 had been, there was nothing. Sensors showed no debris, no radiation, no trace that a moon had ever existed there. The silence was absolute. Minho broadcast again, his voice reaching every ship, every station, every planet in the sector. That was a moon. A dead rock. We can do that to any planet, any fleet, any station. We don't want to. We never wanted this. We want equality. We want respect. We want to live in peace. But if you force our hand, we will end you." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "Withdraw from our colonies. Recognize human sovereignty. Treat us as equals. Or, learn what happens when you push peaceful people too far." The transmission ended. Theron stared at his screens, watching sensor replays of his moon's destruction. His empire's moon. Gone in an instant. His communication system buzzed. It was his own military commanders, calling from Velkari Prime. "Emperor, we strongly advise standing down. We cannot fight this weapon." "All ships," Theron said slowly, his voice hollow. Cease fire. Fall back to defensive positions. The Velkari fleet backed away from the eternal requiem. In the council chambers, every representative sat in stunned silence. They had just watched a moon disappear. They had just seen a weapon that could end worlds, and the humans had used it on an empty rock, deliberately choosing restraint when they could have committed genocide. Vim's ancient voice filled the chamber. The humans have spoken. I suggest we listen. The 6 hours passed slowly. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were called. Representatives argued, threatened, and pleaded. Some demanded that combined galactic forces attack Earth immediately. Others urged caution. A few quiet voices suggested that maybe, just maybe, humanity deserved the equality it had asked for. Ambassador Doyun stood in the human section, watching the chaos. He had received encrypted messages from Earth. The Velkari occupation forces had not withdrawn. In fact, more troops were landing on the 3 human colonies. Emperor Theron was gambling that humanity wouldn't actually use its terrible weapon on inhabited worlds. Doyun hoped desperately that Theron was wrong. On Arcturus 7, Junho watched Velkari soldiers round up his neighbors. The aliens had declared martial law. Anyone who resisted was arrested. His sister had been taken 3 hours ago for speaking against the occupation. Junho stood in his apartment, fists clenched, feeling helpless. Above the planet, Captain Salmon and her crew on the Silent Observer continued recording everything. The stealth ship's sensors captured every act of aggression, every arrested human, every destroyed home. The footage was being broadcast across the galaxy in real time. Captain, her communications officer said quietly, we're receiving a message from the Eternal Requiem. It's addressed to all human vessels. Put it through. Captain Minho's voice filled the small bridge. All human forces. This is your captain speaking. The 6-hour deadline has passed. The Velkari have refused to withdraw. They believe we are bluffing. They believe we won't actually use our weapon against them. They're about to learn they are wrong. Salmon felt her stomach tighten. She knew what was coming. However, Minho continued, we will not target civilian populations. We will not become the monsters they think we are. Stand by for precision operations. The transmission ended. In the Eternal Requiem's bridge, Minho stood before his crew. They were all volunteers. They had all accepted that this day might come. But knowing and doing were very different things. Jiwon, he said quietly. Status on the weapon? The young engineer looked pale but determined. Gravitational collapse cannon is charged. Sir, I need to ask. What are we targeting? Nothing. Yet. Minho turned to his tactical officer. Yuna, show me the Velkari fleet positions. Yuna brought up a 3-dimensional display. It showed the entire sector around Valantha Prime. Velkari military forces were everywhere. Their home fleet of 2,000 warships had arrived, surrounding both the Council Station and the Eternal Requiem. 2,000 ships, Minho said. Every one of them has weapons. Everyone could kill millions of humans if they reach our colonies. He turned to Jiwon. Can you disable their weapons without destroying the ships? Jiwon's eyes widened. Sir, that would require pinpoint accuracy. We'd have to target specific systems on 2,000 different vessels simultaneously. The computational requirements alone. Can you do it? Minho asked. She was quiet for a moment, running calculations in her head. Theoretically, yes. The gravitational collapse cannon can fire multiple low-power pulses. Each pulse could be targeted at weapon systems specifically. We'd need to hit them at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right force. Too much power, and we breach the hull, killing the crew. Too little, and we don't disable anything. How long do you need? Give me 10 minutes to program the targeting computer. Minho nodded. You have 5 minutes. We don't have time for perfection. Just make it work. Emperor Theron contacted the Eternal Requiem directly. His shimmer was dark red now, the color of Velkari rage. Human Captain, your 6 hours are finished. We have not withdrawn. What will you do now? Will you murder billions of my people? Will you prove that humans are the monsters we always believed you were? Minho stared at the Emperor's image on his screen. I'm going to do something you clearly never learned, Emperor. I'm going to show restraint. Not because you deserve it, but because my people are better than that. He cut the transmission and turned to Yuna. How many civilian vessels are in the area? I count 47 merchant ships, 18 passenger transports, and 5 medical vessels. Mark them as protected. Under no circumstances do we target anything that isn't military. He checked the countdown. G1. Status: programming complete. I've calculated firing solutions for all 2,000 Valkyrie warships. Each shot will be calibrated to disable weapon systems only. Accuracy estimated at 97%. And the other 3%? Either the weapons won't be fully disabled, or, she swallowed, or we might hit something vital. Hull breaches. Life support. I can't guarantee 0 casualties. Minho closed his eyes briefly. Command meant making impossible choices. If we don't do this, those 2,000 ships will attack our colonies. Millions of humans will die. I'll take a 3% risk over certain genocide. He opened his eyes. All hands, this is the captain. What we're about to do has never been attempted before. We're going to fire 2,000 precision shots in under 1 minute. If this works, we prove humanity can wield terrible power with surgical precision. If it fails, we might start a war that ends our species. But we have no choice. Our people are counting on us. He sat down in his command chair. G1, you have weapons control. Fire when ready. G1's hands moved across her console. The targeting computer linked directly to the gravitational collapse cannon. Every Valkyrie warship was marked. Every weapon system was mapped. The firing sequence was ready. She whispered one more prayer. Then she pressed the button. For 47 seconds, the Eternal Requiem fired continuously. 2,000 gravitational pulses, each one carefully calibrated. Each one precisely aimed. The weapon didn't make noise in the vacuum of space, but the ship vibrated with each shot. Around Valantha Prime, Valkyrie warships suddenly went dark. Not destroyed, not exploded, just disabled. Their weapons systems collapsed inward, crushed by micro-singularities. Their hulls remained intact. Their life support continued functioning. But every gun, every torpedo launcher, every weapon they possessed simply stopped working. In the council chambers, representatives watched in stunned amazement. On their screens, they saw it happen in real time. 2,000 warships, each one a threat capable of destroying cities, rendered harmless in under a minute. How? Someone whispered. How is that possible? Vim, the ancient moderator, answered quietly. Because the humans are using progenitor technology, and because they chose precision over power, they could have destroyed all those ships. They chose not to. On the Valkyrie flagship, Emperor Theron stared at his control panels. Every weapon system showed red. Emergency crews reported the same thing from every ship in his fleet. They were defenseless. His second-in-command spoke carefully. Emperor, we cannot fight them. We have no weapons. The human ship could destroy us at will. Theron's shimmer faded to pale gray, the color of defeat. Open a channel to the human captain. Minho's face appeared on his screen. You have made your point, Theron said, his voice hollow. What are your terms? Withdraw from all human colonies immediately. Recognize human sovereignty. Return all prisoners unharmed, and never threaten my people again. And if I refuse? Minho's expression didn't change. Then I target your homeworld next. Not with a killing shot. But imagine how your people will react when I erase one of your major cities with the same precision I just used on your fleet. Imagine the terror. Imagine the chaos. Now ask yourself if your pride is worth that. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head, a gesture of submission in his culture. We will withdraw. The colonies are yours. Back on Arcturus 7, Junho heard announcement sirens blaring. Valkyrie soldiers were returning to their ships. His sister was released from detention. Confused, but unharmed. Within hours, the last alien soldier left the planet. Junho stood in the street with thousands of others, watching the Valkyrie ships lift off and disappear into the sky. People were crying, hugging each other, celebrating. Someone started singing an old Earth song about freedom. Others joined in. In space, the silent observer dropped its stealth mode and broadcast a message. To all human vessels and colonies, the Valkyrie have withdrawn. We are free. Across human space, the celebrations began. But in the Eternal Requiem's bridge, there was no celebration. G1 checked casualty reports from the Valkyrie fleet. 17 ships had suffered hull breaches from the precision strikes. 93 Valkyrie sailors were dead. She put her head in her hands. I killed them. I tried to be precise, but I killed them. Captain Minho stood beside her. You saved millions. The alternative was total war. You made the hardest choice any soldier can make. You used violence to stop greater violence. Does that make it right? No, Minho said honestly. It makes it necessary. There's a difference. The Eternal Requiem remained at Valantha Prime, its weapons still charged, its presence a reminder of what humanity could do if pushed. But it didn't fire again. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Or so they hoped. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Every representative was required to attend. The chamber was packed with beings from hundreds of worlds, all of them talking at once. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Ambassador Doyun stood in the human section, calm and quiet. He had received his instructions from Earth. Today, humanity would either be accepted as equals, or there would be war. There was no middle ground anymore. Vim called the session to order. His ancient voice carried authority that silenced the crowd. We are here to discuss the human situation. The Eternal Requiem remains in orbit. Its weapons are charged. We have all seen what it can do. The question before us is simple. What happens next? A Torim representative stood. The humans have proven they have terrible power. But power does not grant them the right to threaten the entire galaxy. I propose we assemble a united fleet and destroy that ship before it destroys us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Doyun pressed his button to speak. And how many of your people are willing to die in that attack? We disabled 2,000 Valkyrie ships without destroying them. We could have killed everyone aboard. We chose not to. But make no mistake. If you attack us, we will defend ourselves. And next time, we won't be so gentle. Is that a threat? The Torim demanded. It's a fact, Doyun replied. You've spent 2 centuries treating us like children. Now you're angry because we grew up and built something you can't control. But we're not asking for control over you. We're asking for what we've always asked for. Equality. Give us that, and the Eternal Requiem will never fire another shot. Emperor Theron entered the chamber. His shimmer was dull, a sign of shame in his culture. But he walked with dignity to his section and requested permission to speak. I fought the humans, Theron said quietly. I believed they were weak. I was wrong. They are not weak. They are patient. For 50 years, they built that ship in secret. They could have used it for conquest. Instead, they used it for defense. They could have destroyed my homeworld. Instead, they erased a dead moon as a warning. They could have killed every sailor on my ships. Instead, they disabled our weapons and left us alive. He paused. I have led the Valkyrie for 40 years. In that time, I have conquered 17 species. I have taken what I wanted because I could. The humans taught me something today. Power without mercy makes you a tyrant. Power with mercy makes you a leader. I vote to grant humanity full equality on this council. The chamber fell silent. Nobody had expected that. Other representatives began to speak. Some still resisted. But more and more voices joined the call for human equality. The vote was called. 692 representatives voted in favor. 155 voted against. The motion passes, Vim announced. Humanity is granted full status on the Galactic Council, including veto power over any decisions affecting human colonies. The 3 disputed worlds are confirmed as human territory. No species may interfere with human sovereignty without council approval. Doyun felt his knees go weak with relief. They had done it. 200 years of fighting. And finally, humanity had won its freedom. But he knew this was just the beginning. On the Eternal Requiem, Captain Minho received the news. His crew erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, crying with relief. They had volunteered knowing they might never see Earth again. Now they could go home as heroes. But Minho didn't celebrate. He walked through the ship's corridors to the weapon control room, where Jiwan sat alone, staring at casualty reports. "We won," he told her. 93 people died, she replied, without looking up. 93 people died to save millions. That's not nothing. It's not enough either. Jiwan finally looked at him. "Captain, what do we do with this ship now? We can't unmake it. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. The galaxy knows what we have. Some will respect us for it. Others will fear us. Some will try to steal our technology. Others will try to destroy us before we become too powerful." Minho sat down beside her. "We do what humanity has always done. We adapt. We survive. And we remember that this weapon exists to protect, not to conquer. Will everyone remember that? What about in 50 years? 100? What if future captains aren't as careful as you? Then we'll have failed," Minho admitted. "But today, we succeeded. Let that be enough for now." Admiral Heijin arrived at the Eternal Requiem a week later, bringing relief crews and orders from Earth. She met with Minho in his ready room. "Congratulations, Captain. You're a hero on every human world." Minho made a face. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like someone who barely avoided starting a galactic war. You did more than that. You changed how the galaxy sees us. We're not victims anymore. We're not underdogs. We're equals." She handed him a datapad. "Your new orders. The Eternal Requiem will patrol neutral space as a peacekeeping vessel. Several smaller species have already requested our protection from aggressive neighbors. We're becoming galactic police. We're becoming what we always should have been, protectors, not conquerors." Heijin smiled. "Earth is building 3 more ships using progenitor technology. Smaller than the Requiem, but still powerful. We're creating a real defense fleet. But this ship, your ship, will always be the symbol. The reminder that humans can be pushed only so far." Minho nodded slowly. "What about Sujin? The scientist who made all this possible? She's returning to Titan. Says she has more progenitor ruins to study. Apparently the factory we found is just the beginning. There might be entire cities buried under the ice. Should we be digging up more ancient weapons? Should we leave them for someone else to find?" Heijin countered. "The progenitors vanished for a reason. Maybe they destroyed themselves with their own technology, or maybe they ascended to something greater. Either way, their knowledge exists. We can study it, learn from it, and hopefully avoid their mistakes." 3 months later, Junho stood in the rebuilt town square on Arcturus 7. A memorial had been erected, listing the names of humans who had died during the Velkari occupation. 73 people. His sister's best friend was on that list. But above the memorial, a new flag flew, the flag of free humanity. Not Earth's flag, but a new one representing all human colonies. Blue and white with 12 stars, one for each colony world. "It's beautiful," his sister said, standing beside him. "It cost a lot," Junho replied. "Freedom always does." In the council chambers, Vim floated alone, accessing ancient archives. He was researching the progenitors, trying to understand what had happened to them. The records were fragmentary. millions of years old. But one thing was clear. The progenitors had possessed incredible power. They had built weapons that could destroy stars. They had mastered technology that seemed like magic. And then, at the height of their civilization, they had vanished. No war, no disaster, just gone. Vim wondered if humanity would follow the same path. They had found progenitor technology and used it to build a weapon of unimaginable power. Would they be corrupted by that power? Life, would they become tyrants themselves? Or would they be different? Would they remember why they built the weapon in the first place? Only time would answer that question. On Earth, in the secret facility where the Eternal Requiem had been designed, Sujin stood in front of a new discovery. Her team had found another progenitor data crystal buried deep in Titan's ice. This one contained something different, not weapon designs, but a message. She activated the crystal. Holographic text appeared, written in the progenitor language that she had spent decades learning to read. The message was simple. We built weapons to protect ourselves. The weapons worked too well. We became what we fought against. By the time we realized our mistake, it was too late. If you are reading this, learn from us. Power without wisdom leads to extinction. Choose wisdom. Sujin stood in the dark laboratory for a long time, staring at those words. Then she encrypted the message and sent it to Captain Minho. He read it on the bridge of the Eternal Requiem, now patrolling the border between two alien species who had been at war for a century. The ship's presence had convinced both sides to accept a ceasefire. Minho forwarded the message to every human colony, every Earth government official, and every officer in the defense forces. The message ended with a note from Minho himself. We have been given terrible power. Let us never forget that we built it to defend the defenseless, not to become oppressors ourselves. The progenitors forgot this lesson. We must not. Years passed. The Eternal Requiem never fired its main weapon again. Its presence was enough. When aggressive species threatened weaker ones, the ship appeared. When tyrants tried to conquer their neighbors, the ship reminded them that justice still existed. Humanity grew into its role as a galactic power. Not through conquest, but through demonstrated capability and chosen restraint. The galaxy had learned that humans could destroy worlds. They had also learned that humans chose not to. That combination, terrible power and deliberate mercy, proved more influential than any weapon. The day Earth raised its planet-killer warship was the day humanity finally earned its place among the stars. Not as victims, not as conquerors, but as equals who understood that true strength meant knowing when not to use your power. The Eternal Requiem still patrols today. Its weapon remains charged, a reminder of what happens when peaceful people are pushed too far. But its captain's standing orders have never changed. Defend the defenseless, protect the weak, and fire only when every other option has been exhausted. Because humanity learned something the progenitors forgot. The greatest power isn't the ability to destroy. It's the wisdom to choose not to.